Hello and welcome to another episode of Weather Nerds. I am your host, First Alert Weather Nerd CD Finley, coming at you on this Wednesday, June 18th. There's a little bit to talk about in regard to the weather headlines coming up this week, and before we get into it, let me make sure I'm actually able to access all of the things that I need to be able to access here. So for those of you here in the Central Texas area, we're kind of heading into the summertime, dog days of summer, I guess is what you could call it, where the things start to get a little bit more repetitive in terms of the forecast, as they usually do this time of year. And thank you again all for joining us today. Again, if you're watching live on Facebook, this is something that we do just about every single week, where we talk about just kind of general weather headlines, not just here locally, but across the nation, in regard to what's going on. Again, weather-wise. But here in Central Texas, the big headlines, especially from last week, was how much rain we actually saw, and surprisingly enough, some of the severe weather that actually came along with that. I know, so last Wednesday, the big headliner was the random pop-up tornado warning that we had in northern McLennan County out near the China Spring and Golson area, and that was late Wednesday evening. And again, this was actually... I'm trying to remember. I think we did this last episode 14, this past Wednesday. So it was back pretty much that same day, right after I got done with work that day, about 5:30. I finished with the 5 o'clock show. I went home. Brady was the only one in studio covering things and stuff like that. And we weren't really expecting all too much, but lo and behold, a random tornado actually did happen out toward the Golson area this past Wednesday, June 12th, as you can see here, as indicated by the National Weather Service preliminary rating here. So based on this, it was on the damage estimate, it was an EF0, which for those of you who aren't aware of how the damage rating works for tornadoes, it goes from EF0 all the way up to EF5. Of course, EF0 being the weakest, EF5 being the one that does the most damage. Thankfully, this one didn't do too much, and actually the only reason it was even noticed was because it did just do a little bit of damage to, I believe, like a shed out there near the Golson area. And as you can see, the event ID right there on the top left says west of Golson. And you can actually see kind of a general area of where it was. It was right there on the corner of Mary Ware Drive and Hamilton Drive out there in West Golson. So again, this was last Wednesday evening, about a week ago today, on June 12th. It was a very short-lived tornado. It didn't even last more than a minute, and the path length wasn't even a quarter of a mile. It was shorter than that. So very, very quick-lived tornado. And so those of you who are curious about it, and it was actually caught on video. Unfortunately, I don't have the video to show you today. In fact, if you go back to our chief meteorologist Brady Taylor's Facebook page from that night, I believe there actually was a viewer who commented video of said tornado on there. So if you're curious, go check that out, because you may have to scroll a little bit, but it should be there. So that was one of probably the top headline from last week, aside from all the rainfall. The rainfall obviously was a big deal, which we have seen quite a lot of it. And, one thing that really happens, especially if you're someone in Central Texas, I know my grandparents, they own a pool. Brady, our chief meteorologist, Brady Taylor, he has a pool out in his backyard. And if you ever maintained a pool, you would know that it's a lot of effort to do so, especially when after heavy rains, all the worms really like to come up out of the ground and, essentially infest the bottom of your pool. So this is a video I took in my backyard from a few days ago of all the worms. If you're not a fan of worms, feel free to look away for a moment. But you can see there's a bunch of them there on the bottom of the ground. And I can or bottom of the pool rather, zoom in on there and see. But if you're ever curious, essentially, the reason that this happens, if you ever have a pool and you see all the worms on the ground, after all this rain happens, essentially all the earthworms, right? They have their own little tunnels and, areas underneath the ground. All of those areas eventually end up flooded, especially when you have heavy rains. And so it kind of floods the worms out, and they escape to a higher ground where it's a little bit more dry. And then sometimes they could end up in your pool after they start searching for moisture again. So that's the reason why that happens, if anybody was curious about what happens with worms whenever it really rains a lot. And for those of you who are new here on Weather Nerds, again, this is kind of what we do. We kind of go through recent headlines and nerd out about them a little bit. So yeah, that's fun stuff right there. And if you're curious about how much rain we've actually seen so far, let me see if I can pull that up for us here. Here we go. So, I pressed the wrong keyboard. I got so many keyboards here in front of me, I don't know where I'm going. June 2025, we are up to almost 5.5 inches of rainfall. It's been a very rainy first half of the month. And up to this date, which of course, as of the time of this recording, if you're watching on Degrees of Science, today is June 18th, Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. Of course, if you're watching live, this is a little bit more pertinent to you. But almost 5.5 inches and about 3.25 inches of surplus from the month to the date in regard to what is normal for this particular time. But if you compare that to the yearly totals, we are nearly at about 19.25 inches actually for the year, putting us at nearly 3/4 of an inch in a rain surplus for the entire year. So I had Alyssa Riggs, can't get my words out. She asked me earlier this morning if you watched our news morning show. She was filling in for Clayton and Keisha this morning. She was asking me, she was like, how much rain is like too much rain? When do we need rain again? Because for a little while, we were really starving for that rain. Now that we've had it, it's not necessarily a bad thing that we're entering, kind of a more dry period. But it's a good question, though. It's like because there is such a thing as too much rain. And unfortunately for us, it doesn't look like we have a huge surplus for the year. We're still less than an inch in terms of the rainfall surplus year to date. So while, yes, in the short term, it might be okay to not have a little bit of rain, eventually, once that faucet turns off in the summertime, that's going to be eventually a problem. So we'll have to kind of watch for that again. We're kind of used to that this time of year, especially once we head into the summertime. So I'm seeing a question here. For those of you guys watching on Facebook, I see a question from David. What about snails? I get snails when it rains a lot. Yeah, it's also a possibility. I would imagine snails. I'm not quite familiar enough with snails, but I would imagine it's probably a similar situation where they kind of get rained out and they start looking for higher, drier ground. So that's probably why you see a lot of snails. I would imagine it's a pretty similar situation there. That's kind of a rainfall update in terms of where we're at here in Central Texas. Again, a very rainy start to the month. And of course, another thing that we have coming up in the weather headlines is the first official day of summer. So I know a lot of people get kind of confused about the differences in when summer actually starts. There's actually two different times that summer can officially start. You have meteorological summer, which is based on the calendar year. So meteorological summer, that goes from June 1st, which has already started, all the way to the end of September, I believe. So that is meteorological summer. Then you have astronomical summer, which is based on the Earth's position relative to the sun. And so that is why we have the summer solstice that is coming up on Friday, June 20th, about 2 days from now at the time of this recording, and for those of you watching live, which, for those of you who don't know what the summer solstice is, essentially it's the longest day of the entire year. June 20th, your Friday, is going to be 14 hours and 12 minutes of daylight, and from then on, the days are going to get, daylight length anyway, it's going to get shorter and shorter. So sunset will start happening a little bit earlier, sunrise will start happening a little bit later. Fun fact for all of you people who are wondering about when summer officially starts. There's kind of two different answers for that. In the meteorological world, it's June 1st. In the astronomical world, it's June 20th. At least this year it is. That is kind of one of the things that we're watching on the headlines. Of course, we already talked a little bit about the rain that we've had and of course, the official confirmed tornado that we had in Golson last Wednesday. Another thing that kind of hit the headlines this past week is the wind gusts that we had from this past Sunday. So if you were out, celebrating Father's Day and, enjoying the barbecue or whatever you may have been doing that day, there's a very good chance you may have been caught off guard by a few of the showers and storms that moved through. This is a screenshot that I took from this past Sunday. Right before I went into work, I posted this on my Facebook page, which if you guys haven't already, feel free to follow me over on CD Finley KWTX. That's my official Facebook page. But you can see, I kind of circled it right there. You had the long line of storms moving through, and you can notice the very lack of severe thunderstorm warnings here. Now, what you see on that left side near Hamilton, that little kind of tan box that's drawn there, that's actually not a severe thunderstorm warning. That was actually what's called a special weather statement. So sometimes if the National Weather Service is seeing a storm that is kind of on the strong side, but doesn't quite reach the severe criteria, they'll put out what's called a special weather statement. And sometimes most people don't really kind of talk about that because it's not, anything that's going to impact you in any major way. But sometimes the National Weather Service, or a lot of the times the National Weather Service will do that. So yeah, that's a little fun fact right there. But you can see just based off of that special weather statement, though, that there was definitely a windy storm that moved through this past Sunday. In fact, let's take a look at the peak wind gusts from that day. Recorded at 56 miles per hour at the Waco Regional Airport. That was the highest wind gust that was recorded as those storms moved through. And I definitely believe it because for those of you who aren't aware, I grew up in and around the China Spring area, which is practically where the Waco Regional Airport is. And we live out there, and this was my back patio after the storm rolled through. Little did I know that our back patio furniture was going to be blown up against the wall. Thankfully, that umbrella didn't do too much. It kind of fell on top of that window right there. And actually, it didn't fall on top of the window. It fell kind of in between the window. There's a little bit of brick there. So thankfully, it didn't have any damage from that, aside from a few tables and chairs being blown around. But yeah, it was certainly interesting to see. I was getting ready to go to work right when that storm rolled through. And walked out to the backyard, saw that. So that was a lot of fun. So yeah, definitely can confirm that that wind gust that we had this past Sunday. It certainly was a strong one. Thankfully, most other areas like Gatesville, Killeen, etc., didn't see too much in terms of wind gusts. So that was kind of one of the big headlines that hit this past weekend. And what else has been going on across Central Texas and with your First Alert Weather team here at KWTX? Well, if you guys are big fans of the 4 o'clock show that we have on weekdays, you might have seen this last week. This was a little bit of a surprise, but we had none other than Mr. Blizzard on the show. This was quite entertaining to see. We got to introduce him on the show and talk to him a little bit about blizzards and stuff like that. Here's a picture of all of us there getting ready to talk to Mr. Blizzard. He even brought us some blizzards there. There's Justin Early and Lauren Westbrook there. We were talking with Mr. Blizzard right there. And, of course, he also came in and he jumped in on my forecast here. In fact, that day was actually a First Alert Weather Day. That was the day that we were getting all that rain. The flooding concern was certainly there. And actually, that might have been the same day that we had that Gulson tornado late that night. So that was a busy day, to say the least. We were talking about Mr. Blizzard. We were talking with Mr. Blizzard. And we were later on that evening, we were talking about tornadoes kind of unexpected, or tornado, I should say, unexpectedly. And then, of course, this is a video that Lauren Westbrook took right before we went on air.
Brownie batter and chocolate chip cookie dough for one person who's very excited.
So, yeah, fun stuff right there. It's always a fun day when you get to walk into work and see a giant blizzard standing in the studio. So, yeah, that's a little bit of a look behind the scenes of what was going on during the 4 o'clock that day. I know a lot of people had a lot of fun with that. So, yeah, that just about covers it in terms of local headlines. Of course, obviously, in terms of national headlines, there was a lot of talk about what happened in the northern Great Plains the last few days. Unfortunately, I don't have any photos or videos to share with you on this one. But if you look it up on social media, Facebook, your Google, whatever, wherever you look, you will probably find a bunch of tornado pictures from essentially North Dakota and Minnesota especially. There was a very photogenic tornado that happened out in Minnesota just a few days ago. Very, very beautiful. It was very slow moving. As far as I'm aware, it didn't hit anything. I haven't looked to see, if I'm being totally honest with y'all. Y'all may have to do research on that. But it was definitely a very large photogenic tornado that happened out there in Minnesota about a day or two ago. So feel free to look that kind of stuff up. That's kind of where the severe weather has been for the course of the last week or two. For those of you who aren't aware how storm season typically progresses. Like late March, early April is when we start to see storms kind of in the Gulf states, is what we call Dixie Alley. So like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, they get all the early season stuff. Middle of the season is usually when we start to see it kind of more typical tornado alley, right? So like from here all the way to North Texas and eventually into North Dakota and maybe even as far east as, Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, those Midwestern states right there, which there's a lot of talk right now about, how Tornado Alley may actually be shifting, and that's kind of a big topic of conversation within the meteorological world right now. Can't neither confirm nor deny, but based on recent observations, it certainly appears that way. But overall, that's just kind of how the severe weather season has typically kind of progressed. And now we're in that season where, okay, everything's kind of moving north of here now. So if you ever watch our noon show later on here in about 30 minutes or so, I'll probably be talking about the severe weather risk that's happening up in Illinois and Indiana today, which I can actually probably pull that up here for you and show you that real quick before we get into the kind of last bit of the episode here. Let me see if I can pull up. Here we go. Pull up the risk areas for today. So yeah, this is what we're looking at here. So you can see there is actually a level 1 marginal that actually has been updated compared to this morning. So it no longer includes Central Texas, which is good. It seems like that our odds of rain chances have actually come down quite a bit. Do have that slight risk up in North Texas today, but as you zoom out, you can see, there's that level 3 enhanced, essentially from the southeastern tip of Missouri up into western Illinois, and pretty much the entire state of Indiana is included in that level 3 enhanced risk today. So that's kind of a general idea of what we're looking at today. We're just not really looking at much in Central Texas. As a matter of fact, while I'm already up here talking about it, I can go ahead and pull up the 10-day weather planner that all of you are so used to seeing. While we're keeping about a 20% chance tonight into tomorrow, and especially tomorrow afternoon, mainly across the Brazos Valley, could see a few pop-up showers. The main headliner in the weather world in Central Texas today is low to mid 90-degree temperatures all the way into the next week. Heat and humidity. This is going to be that time of year where we're just talking copy and paste forecast, probably for the next good 2 or 3 months or so. So that's what we're talking about coming up at noon today. Kind of deep diving into that a little bit. I'll kind of give you all an overview of what the overall weather pattern is looking like, stuff like that. So there's a little bit of a preview there for you. And of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, Friday's that first day of summer. Tomorrow, coming up on Juneteenth. So a few interesting things coming up on the calendar there as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about what we're talking about today at the noon hour. And of course, you'll probably hear more from Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor around the 4 or 5 o'clock news and later on tonight as well. What else do we have going on? Well, let's see if we can pull this up here. I'm going to try and run this, because last time I did this before, when I was doing my test runs and making sure everything worked okay, it was running some audio. So forgive me if it goes over for whatever reason, but we are going to give this a shot. Essentially, what I'm going to show you guys here is the Degrees of Science YouTube page, where you can find, here we go, all of our episodes of just about everything that you need. So if you're watching here live on Facebook, obviously we're live Wednesdays at 11 until about 11:30, and of course we pre-record, or we record the live stream rather, and post it to our Degrees of Science YouTube channel. I'm going to mute that here and make sure that's not. Let me double check in here and see. Okay. Good. It's not going over. I was worried that we would hear audio from the website, but good thing we aren't. So anyway, yeah, this is the Degrees of Science YouTube channel. You can also find all of the episodes of Degrees of Science on kwtx.com/Degrees of Science. There's the most recent episode of Degrees of Science here that was uploaded about 25 minutes ago. As a matter of fact, this is an episode I did with Rover, which is a company that essentially specializes in pet care, pet safety. So we talked to one of their experts about heat safety as we head further into the summer months. And then, of course, we have episodes of KWTX Weather Extra. Jillian Johnson is back, and so she's pumping out all of those episodes of Weather Extra just about every single weekend. So feel free to check those out and kind of catch up with her and where she's been and all the topics that we cover there. And, of course, you can see all of our episodes of Weather Nerds there as well as I kind of scroll through here. And if you hit videos, you can see kind of what's been uploaded most recently. But if you want to find Weather Nerds specifically, you can go over here to the podcast tab. There's a whole playlist right here full of all of the episodes of Weather Nerds with the exception of episode 1. I think we have episode 2 all the way up to the current one, which is on right now. Of course, we'll have that uploaded likely later this afternoon for your viewing pleasure. So that is a little bit about what's been going on across Central Texas and the nation in general in terms of weather headlines. Thank you all so much for tuning in on Facebook, whether you're watching on Facebook Live or if you're watching on the Degrees of Science YouTube channel. Really appreciate all of your viewership. Hopefully, we will see you again next Wednesday, I think. You know what? Let me double check something real quick because I'm not even sure if I work next Wednesday. Okay, I lied to you. I apologize. I have a vacation coming up next Wednesday, so there will likely not be an episode of Weather Nerds heading into next week, just as an FYI. But we will eventually be back sometime within the next 2 or 3 weeks, I would imagine. So, again, this has been episode 15. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful week ahead.